The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. It's not that complex, but if you try to explain it to someone who's never seen it, you sound like a friggin' meth head lunatic. Probably not the movie to reference on a first date. Or maybe it's exactly the one. It's a quintessentially 80s artifact, a layered Cold War critique and an anachronistic piece of 1930s pulp action-adventure dropped into the world decades later, like it had been here evolving the whole time. As though Doc Savage or The Shadow had continued in popularity through World War II and into the Cold War, giving us this action hero, detective, scientist that's long since exhausted the sensible stories and now relies on wacky premises and offhand references to decades of lore for fan service.
Buckaroo Banzai. It's the latest issue.
Buckaroo Banzai feels almost like a piece of some parallel world dropped into the middle of the 80s. The film lets you know the kind of crazy you're in for right from the start. In the opening scene, Buckaroo Banzai, a half-Japanese scientific genius played by Peter Weller in black hair dye, is going to drive a jet-powered Ford through a mountain to slip into another dimension. But first, he has to help Jeff Goldblum with some brain surgery. He's also frontman for a rock band. Got it? Good. The film is packed with silly pulp references, apparent in-jokes and improvisations.
Why is there a watermelon there?
And literary references to works like Thomas Pynchon's Crying of Lot 49 and Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. Or maybe I'm reading too much into the president's striking resemblance to Charles Foster Kane after all the other Orson Welles references.
You mean the guy from the old wine commercials?
But you don't need to get any of those references to enjoy the movie. It has that Star Wars conceit of dropping you into the middle of a story, but it's only the one film. But it has to give the viewer just enough to follow it, even while implying there's so much more. Buckaroo Banzai captures the right balance perfectly, bringing you right up to that wall of bafflement without plowing through it. And part of how it manages that is by using the Cold War tensions of the day as a bridge between the story's world and our own. The pervasive nature of the Cold War is difficult to fully understand if you didn't live through it.
All I'm trying to say is, and I hope I speak for everyone in this room, is that I am scared.
It wasn't a single geopolitical issue so much as it was just part of how the world was. There was an assumed mild chance of mini-suns on any given day, and it had been like that for decades. The film is full of Cold War gags.
The president's on line 1 calling about is everything okay with the alien spacecraft from Planet 10, or should he just go ahead and destroy Russia?
Tell him yes on 1 and no on 2.
Which was yes, destroy Russia or number 2?
And they worked on a more pervasive foundational level than they do today. By referencing this throughout the film in various spoofy ways and letting the war between the black and red Lectroids use this shorthand, the film is able to focus on its characters without having to spend much time setting up the world. And that lets it get away with all these random little nuggets of weird. Like, what is the business model of this place? It sets up the war between the black Lectroids, who are presented as uniformly good, and the red Lectroids, who are
evil, pure and simple from the 8th dimension!
But it also gives us enough to make us wonder if, like the actual Cold War, things aren't as simple as the narrative suggests. Sure, the red Lectroids kill a few people, and their leader is a double-plus nutjob. These are clearly not good guys. But the other side of this conflict does a few things that give me pause.
Destroy yourself, John Kent.
This guy was the pilot of their little Hot Pocket.
Thermal pod.
And got shot down by some hunters. When a trio of Reds show up and start breaking into the vehicle, the pilot's superiors just write him off. It's a bit concerning in terms of how they value individual lives. But the real interesting piece comes when the messenger they sent delivers a recording, an ultimatum really, informing Buckaroo that he has to prevent the Reds from getting the overthruster, the key to making trans-dimensional travel work. This is not a request. There's an explicit threat.
We will have no choice but to disrupt worldwide electronic communications and fire a particle beam weapon from your airspace to Smolensk in the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics.
They're using direct military pressure to coerce Team Banzai, and by extension the United States, into being proxies in their war. They're monitoring from above. They provide an advisor, but they expect the local forces to do the dirty work, and if they fail, well...
If you fail, we will be forced to help you destroy yourselves.
Just as in the Cold War, if you're a third party caught between the two power blocks, you're stuck choosing to align with the lesser evil, and who that is depends very much on your own circumstances. The Soviet Union and the United States were both equipping guerrilla groups and facilitating coups around the world. Sometimes there's no good guys, just less bad guys from where you happen to be sitting on any given day. In this case, these Lectroids are threatening to destroy the Earth. Lizardo and his people just want to go home.
I feel so break up. I want to go home.
Until that fighting about the overthruster started, it seems like the worst they were doing to Americans was wasting large sums of taxpayer dollars on bogus government contracts. We hardly need invaders from Planet 10 to do that. Which brings me to Yoyodyne propulsion systems. On the surface, Yoyodyne is an aerospace company with a development contract to build a bomber prototype for the Air Force.
You listen to me. Your private life, that's your own concern, but I'm here to see a bomber, and I'm damn sure going to see it now.
But it's actually a front for the Red Lectroids. All of them live there, and for decades have been building a ship to travel through the dimensional barrier and reconquer their home. Yoyodyne is one of those overlooked pits in the military-industrial complex that the Pentagon drops billions of dollars into and forgets about. It's a defense contractor that has never actually delivered anything. The facility is a dump, and it operates with zero oversight, allowing them the privacy and funding to build their warship to return home.
Where are we going? Planet 10! When? Real soon!
Where they will reconquer Planet 10 under the leadership of the maniacal dictator John Worfen.
W-H-O-R-F-I-N. You got that, honey? John, J-O-H-N.
Whose consciousness is fused into the body of Dr. Emilio Lizardo. Played to perfection by John Lithgow as a sort of mad scientist Mussolini, is an iconic part of this movie.
Laugh a while you can, monkey boy.
On the surface, he's kind of an evil clown, bumbling around and ranting about crazy schemes that don't quite fit together. But there's more depth to Lizardo and his band of followers that I think does a fine job of spoofing cults and political movements, but I repeat myself. And like any good demagogue, you can reject the totality of his message, but you have to acknowledge that it's not all incoherent nonsense. Some of it can be rather insightful, in fact.
History is made at night. Character is what you are in the dark.
Who are you when no one is looking? What do you do when you can get away with anything? This can get lost in the rest of the pantomiming and speechifying, but it made a significant impression on me at the time, more so than any sermon or public school behavioral conditioning. Dr. Lizardo taught me the core of character, that who you are when you think no one is watching is who you really are. But when you're the proxy in someone else's war, someone's always watching. It's something that we don't really notice in the film unless we really start breaking it down, the way that it flips the Cold War narrative around on us. In this movie, we're not America, a confident superpower. We're some piddling minor power caught in the middle of someone else's war, and that comes with a loss of agency.
We've no choice then.
The only threat we face in this war is from the supposed good guys who are using us to clean up their garbage. And this story of being caught between worlds is captured in the character of Buckaroo Banzai himself, a fusion of Japanese and American elements that in some ways echoes late 20th century Japan itself. It was a rough century for Japan. First, the rapid transition from essentially feudal society to industrial power, grafting the industrial technology of the time on top of a much older culture in a very inorganic, quick and dirty way. This fusion of old Bushido and modern technology held together as they defeated Russia, conquered vast swaths of China, and booted the mighty British Empire from their new sphere of influence. But then the might of the American war machine snuffed it out and imposed a new constitution and cultural influence. Post-war Japan was, in the most basic sense, an attempt to rebuild a society from pieces that didn't fit together. And by the 1980s, the culture was carried mostly by people that had grown up with it, pulled in multiple directions at once. Buckaroo Banzai, with his samurai cowboy persona, plays with this cultural fusion in ways similar to what we'd see in later works like Cowboy Bebop, for example. But that's a topic for another time. Hint. Finally, there's a subtle immigration story implied here too. We perceive the Lectroids as being physically the same as us.
Somehow give off the bacteria, we breathe it, it swims up our nose, into our cerebral cortex, where it literally talks to our brain cells, tells us to see exactly what they want us to see.
But they have a distinct cultural identity. The red Lectroids all live in their little enclave, ghetto, expat community, whatever you want to call it, at Yoyodyne. Or do they? On this latest viewing, I had to wonder if maybe a few of them decided that their leader, the maniacal John Worfen, was not so much a mad genius as just mad, and disappeared into the general population, assimilated into late 20th century American society. I imagine some guy living a normal life somewhere in the Midwest hearing on the news about an explosion at Yoyodyne and being grateful he got out of that madhouse when he had the chance. I'm a-going home.